I have a stickle list. I have to check on it. Sorry, I forgot. Hello.
I have a shaila.
I'm missing. I'm not here. And David Labanet? Not here.
I have a shaila. When you write a name which has the letters of Hashem in it, like Yehoshua, which has like Yud, K, Vav,
Yeshua doesn't matter. I never saw any problem with Yeshua. And Yehuda, sometimes they write Yuda, sometimes they abbreviate, and otherwise they just write it.
And when you say the letters, if you're trying to say the name,
you could say Yehuda straight.
Yeah.
No problem.
And what about other names?
Never heard. There's no problem with saying any name. It says in Shulchan Aruch that you shouldn't say the name Sholem in the mikveh, because Sholem is Shmei Shal Kodesh Baruch.
Every word in Nashon Kodesh is Shmei Shal Kodesh Baruch.
Right, but this is directly. This is directly Hashem. Hashem is called by the name Sholem. That's what it says, but I didn't see that people should be nizer in this. All right, let us continue, gentlemen. We are on the line that begins with the word Gashmi. We went a little further. Yes, it's 7 lines from the top, 8 lines from the top. Agree? So we are discussing a phenomenon. There is such a thing as having a taste of Elokus. It's very important to recognize and appreciate the significance of this phenomenon. I make this point very often from different angles, but here we come straight with it. And last time we also discussed the Indian a little bit. On the one hand, we're saying you should have a hisboinus. Hisboinus means that you reflect in your mind. So what does that mean, you reflect in your mind? Are you simply telling yourself, think this and think that? Are you just directing, controlling, so to speak, your thoughts and obliviating yourself to everything else? And I mentioned many, many times that Chas v'Shalom, we don't subscribe to this union of so to speak, mind control or whatever it's called. Of just limiting the thought has to come from the thought process, come from the koyach ha'seichel. It has to be real, not something I'm telling myself. They're like the cult. They just capture the person, put him in the prison in a box, and think like this, and then the person just loses completely his human qualities. That is absolutely not what Chassidus is talking about. Should not make any mistake about it. And yet we're talking about you should be misboining, should think, which means you should think, and this hisbonenus is a seichel dike hisbonenus. You're misboining in the union because your seichel tells you this is true. Like you have proof for it, you have a means to relate to it and say, I see that this must be true. Everyone in his own approach and his own level. The question then is, if this is all a seicheldike thing, so a seicheldike thing is enough to convince a person that this is true. But it does not bring him to in direct contact with it. It only tells him that this is true. So if this is true, how is it going to have an effect on him? That he becomes really affected and he's spoiled, excited about it. And mispoiled beyond the seichel spoils, his heart becomes mispoiled. How can you be mispoiled in your heart with something that you didn't come in contact with? You know it. You know it's true. This is seems like from a distance. And the answer to this is that yes, indeed, Bina is from a distance, but Bina does not originate the Seichel. The originator of the Seichel is in Chochmah. And Chochmah is entirely in close proximity to the Inyan. To the Inyan, to Elokus. This is not something that he had learned, this is something which is inherent in his knowledge. He just has to focus in. The function of focusing in is to become aware of what I already am aware of. What is really my real orientation, my real knowledge.
The objectivity comes from Bina then?
I'm sorry?
The objectivity comes from Bina?
No. This is objective. This is objective.
The Chachma is objective.
The Chachma is objective. What's meant objective? It is not a question of my preference. This is the truth as the truth is. The Chochma also, this is one of the difficult things to understand, but the Chochma also knows the Inyan because it's true, not because I like it. But this truth, it knows firsthand. As a truth, it knows it firsthand. Just like we always explain, sight is a first-hand knowledge. Is it subjective or objective?
Sight?
Yeah.
Subjective.
Objective. How is it subjective? You accept what you see. And yet?
It's not true.
What?
It's not true.
What's not true?
Sight.
What do you mean?
I mean, it's objective, but not true. What you see isn't necessarily what it is.
No, that's already, because you see the physical thing. I'm saying, but sight gives you the reality of the physical world. It's objective reality. It's not, I see it the way I like to see it. It's the objective reality of the physical world. This we spoke about many times. So too is Chochmah. It gives you an objective reality, but it brings it to you. You actually see it and relate to it. It is not something that you know from a distance.
Maybe I didn't understand to begin with. We're saying that when we say Hamuru'u, seemingly there's a contradiction in that we're saying taste, which corresponds to let's say personal interaction, something which is subjective, and the Ru'u, and then see, meaning and then so how do we bring these two together? The objective truth which comes with Re'iyah, with Chachma, and the subjective truth which comes with Tam, which comes with Midas or Bina, whatever it is. So I don't understand I don't understand the explanation.
No. So the explanation is that just like the eye is also through your own experience, and yet you say you see the objective truth. Why? Because the eye is so sensitive so transparent that it does not, it relates to the truth without altering it.
So you might think it's subjective because it's me, but because of the way that the I works, I'm almost taken out of the picture.
That's right. That's exactly it. I see the truth of the object as it is. And the same thing is in Chochmah. This is the special gift of Chochmah. That's why Chochmah is the beginning of life. Chochmah relates to Nefesh, even though it's outside. But it completely takes it the way it is. It's completely transparent. That's why Chochmah is called Bittul. It's a non-presence. Its own presence is completely obliterated. To the extent that it actually feels and tastes and enjoys that realization without it being subjective. It enjoys it because it's enjoyable, not because I enjoy it. You understand? This is an extremely important phenomenon, part of the whole union of Avodah. This is why the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that all inyonim of Kedusha have to emanate through the Chochmah. Because in Chochmah, this is where you come in, you actually come in contact with Kedusha, with Elokus. Otherwise, you know it in some kind of a reformated manner. And it has to be there has to be some kind of a personal interest in it. Whereas in Chochmah, this is mamash. Chochmah is beaten. It takes the inyan the way it is, unadulterated, unadjusted. And this is a pshat in the posuk that there is such a thing as tamu uriu kitei havaya. You can taste it, and yet it's only sight. It's pure. It's not something which is tasted like which is subjective. Oh, I like this. I like this. No.
Objective taste.
It's objective taste, exactly.
It's taste because that is good.
Right. Because Havaya is good, not because it's tasty to you. So this is, okay, so we are on this line, Gashmi, Ruchni. Just like in Gashmi there is a cheich that tastes the food, there is a cheich Ruchni. There is a Ruchnizdike palate, which is Koya HaChochma Yitoim Tuv Tam Belakus. The Koya HaChochma can actually have a good taste in Elokus. Vahu, and that is Kasher Yizboin in Heitev Vigdulas Oirin Soif. When he reflects Heitev, he contemplates. Heitev means well and deeply, thoroughly. Vigdulas Oirin Soif. Not in a passing way, but thoroughly. He gets involved in all the inyonim. Et mizboin in Gdula Sein Sof, k'moi shemufla umeroi mei ha'olamis. And what aspect of the Oirin Soif that he reflect in this context, in this hisbonenus? This is the inyan k'moi shemufla umeroi mei ha'olamis. He thinks about the Oirin Soif of the phenomenon of the fact that this Oirin Soif is removed and supreme over the worlds. Meaning to say, She'eino marei cheilov, that the worlds have no similarity, no commonality with him. There's nothing, no way to approximate the worlds with Elokus. in principle, this means that he thinks of Hashem, or thinks of Elokus, not as part of the world. We shall maybe discuss it another time. Not as part of the world, not in the sense that how he manifests himself through the world. The world is so beautiful, the world is so great. So we see that Hashem can express such great beauty and variety. That's not what this is about. This is not in Elokus itself. This is how Elokus manifests itself through the world. But this Yisbonus is to be misboinen in the pure aspect of Elokus itself. How Elokus is above and independent of the world. And he recognizes that worldliness is totally out of context and out of proximity to him. The concept behind this recognition that is muful or mehuma elamus, elamus eina rechelov. And what does it tell a person? What does it give a person, so to speak, this taste? So I want to kind of relate you to this concept. What kind of taste does it give a person? There is in the Gashmistic thought, in a worldly level thought, which is completely not in context, not proximity to this, but there's a similar inyan. There's a similar inyan that exists in the world. It remains worldly, but still there's similarity to it. And that is when you say there is an abundance of something. You know, abundance means a lot, limitless. Like you say a person, there's an expression, independently wealthy. A person independently wealthy means that he does not need to consider at all how much a thing costs, but that he can obtain it. It's everything is available to him if he wants it. And the sense of it is not just he can want. I mean, a person has a limit to things that he can want. You know, how much potatoes can you eat? It's just that it opens up one's mind. Wealth, if it's done right, opens up a person's mind that he can think in a different way. He doesn't have a narrow perception. He thinks in broader scales. And that, again, if you take it from a fine and gentle approach, it gives a person a sense, an experience of life. In the simple human terms, much broader than normal. I mean, the normal person is concerned not just what he wants, but how can I achieve it? Can I achieve it? As a matter of fact, to begin with, when he considers what he should want, it is based on not what he wants, but it is tempered to begin with by what is accessible, what is doable. That's why Chassidus, I don't know if you came across, when he gives a moshel about, let's say, Rotzein, that a person wants to build a palace, a house. He gives a moshel of a melech. A melech wants to build a house. Why dafke a melech? Why not a plain person? The answer is by a plain person, when he builds a house, he's not building a house necessarily the way he wants it. He builds a house the way he wants it under the circumstances. A melech doesn't have circumstances. So therefore, the house that he builds expresses entirely his personal view of things, his personal talent. So this is all within a worldly context that he can get whatever he wants. But in order to get it, he has to get it. If a melech conceptualizes a palace, the palace doesn't come into being by his conceptualization of it. It still needs to be designed and planned and put together and built. Because it's in the world and has to be made. When you say that this elokus is mufla meruma me'elamus, so you're talking about that which is not put together, not built. It is the essential truth. The way it is mitzad emes itself. So that essential truth one can relate to that. He elevates a person, shaloi b'yarech. If one can understand that when I do a mitzvah, so the mitzvah is valuable within a worldly context, but that's not what it is. The mitzvah comes and brings me in contact with Hashem, who is merumah umufla min ha'olamus. In other words, the truth of the mitzvah goes way beyond world. It is not true because it is true within worldly context. It is an absolute truth because it comes from Hashem Himself. This is a completely different sense of truth, a different sense of a different kind of experience. So, when one is mizboinen in this inyan, or in a similar fashion, he is mizboinen eich baro es ha'olam mayayin leyesh. He's mizboinen of the fact that Hashem created the world from ayin to yesh. This is, in a certain sense, similar. We're not talking about Hashem, how Hashem is present in the yesh in the world. We're talking about how He was able to create, what does this mean that He creates from ayin and yesh? The concept of creation, me'ayin leyesh, you can think of it this way. In our experience, in human experience, there are different levels of the talent and mind power. There is a person who is capable of taking an existing idea and develop it. Then there's a person who is capable of conceptualizing a totally novel idea, something that didn't exist at all before. The experience of bringing out something completely novel is infinitely deeper and greater than developing an existing thing. Why is it so great? Because this idea that he is conceptualizing a totally novel idea, this idea, where does he get that idea from? This idea is rooted in the nefesh. It comes mayayin. It comes from a state of not being into a state of being. It's a little warm in here, isn't it? I see how people are falling asleep. Maybe you can put on the fans. Oh. Yeah. No, I really would like you to understand these inyanim. Remember we spoke, and very simple, we spoke about the fact that for a person to drink from a cup, not putting his face into the water, eating with a spoon and fork, not putting his face into the plate, is a human thing. It's not just, it's practical, but it is appropriate mitzad the respect for the human being. Now let's say, if you would want to contemplate and think and try to correlate and say, what is the meaning, what is the significance of the human being, so that mitzad them that he is a human being, this is why he has certain ways that he does things. Now, but you would actually try to find these simple activities, how they relate to the overall aspect that he is a human being, to the nefesh hanushis, seichel hanushi. Why is it human? But you would want to derive it from the principle, from the very source of the idea that what a human being is. Then you would see the richness in this inyan. How from ayin, from a very, so to speak, an abstract inyan, comes out a definitive idea. So this is within context, so to speak, a human being, how he is supposed to act.
I'm not sure I followed.
No?
According
You got the idea? You got the point?
In terms of the conception of a new idea.
Why is the
You
conception
got
of
it?
a new idea, though?
Huh?
Why is it the conception of a new idea? The idea that a human being should eat with a fork already exists. You're just now trying to figure out why is that human.
Well, it's the same thing. It's finding where it originates from, which means finding it as a new idea. You're not explaining it after the fact. You're going back to the source and trying to see, yes, how it originates from there, how that actually relates to its source.
I don't understand what's new.
Huh?
What about it is new?
Do again?
I don't understand which part of it is new.
Coming from a non-idea, from an abstract into an idea, is new.
New for you, you're saying?
It's new for you, or you see the novelty of it. You see the every time you think of it, it's novel, because you see how it comes from non-presence to a presence. Mizboinen in this, he says, how Elokus, how Hashem created the world, meyayin liyesh. In other words, how the world comes from ayin. What is the initial truth? How is the world contained on an ayin level? And how the Rebbe brought it into being from ayin.
How could we even do? How's that possible?
How is what possible?
That thought process.
No. We don't understand how he created Na'am Yesh.
Oh.
But we misboinen in that phenomenon. Yeah, in the phenomenon of it. What does it mean that he created Me'ayin Liyesh? So you recognize what he is. You see the Inyan Elokus, that Elokus creates Me'ayin, a whole world. In other words, the world, from the perspective of the Meibashon, is not a developed presence. It's Me'ayin. He conceptualized it from inception. Memele Yovin Toiv Ho Elokus. Then after this, his boinus, he will understand the goodness of Elokus. Why? What's so good about it? The goodness. This goes back to what I said to you before in terms of independently wealthy. This goodness, in other words, this union expresses that the Elokus is limitless. He creates me'ayin liyesh. Not like a human being that he can develop things within a context. You can conceptualize the whole thing from scratch. And what thing? The world. May I? She'ein toiv kol ho'elam. Such goodness, that the goodness of the entire world is not kedai neged hatoiv de Elokus, has any value relative in comparison to the toiv of Elokus. Veha his boinonus sorech liyois. This his boinonus has to be behamokas hadas dafka. Beyond the Indian that it's his bonus hate if it's a good his bonus because he's misboinen in its full ramification. Beyond that, it also has to be behamokas hadas, by delving deeply with his das. And this hamokas hadas, we he expressed it over here as being submerged in the inyan, being completely submerged. He is thinking into this in such a way, in such a state of mind, that nothing else exists except the idea that he is misboinanim. That's called hamok sadas. She'inyan hadas hu, what the union of das is, his kashrus, the connecting, the hahergish, and ultimately the sense, the feeling, the hasmodas hadover, and the constancy. Hasmodas means tomid. Hasmodas hadover, the constancy of the inyan. Shekulom tluyim zeh bozeh. All of these three qualities are interdependent. His kashrus, connecting, hergesh and feel, and asmoda and constancy. You cannot have one without the other. Because if you don't feel something, how can you be connected to it? On the other hand, you can't feel something without being connected. And the same thing, you can't feel and be connected without having a certain degree of constancy. In other words, it cannot be sporadic, and in and out. It has to be a dedicated period of time. And then, through this process, through these three qualities, neildu hamidus, and the midas are born.
Question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it is that you tied the idea of independently wealthy to our
the independently wealthy principle I used to illustrate what does it mean to a human being when his pursuit is based exclusively on what his true perception is, without consideration of circumstance and an ability to achieve.
like a truthful pursuit.
There's a certain truthfulness to it. Okay. Now the Rebbe is going to describe the principle of hergish. Hergish means to be sensitive to. Because the union of understanding, like we described before about taste, there is understanding can be present in a person totally as an external experience, an external thing. On the other hand, it could be something that he himself feels and senses its inyan. I'm going to give you an illustration of hergish. In the simple, I'm playing pure seichel level. Oh, good example. Did you ever play with a puzzle? What do you call it? That you put together a puzzle. Some of them can be very complex. You can have hundreds of little pieces. And then you start putting them together, one with the other and the other and the other. And it seems, how are all these pieces ever going to fit into this little square over here? Fit together and have a congruous picture. After you go through the whole process and you achieve and you put in the last thing, you say, wow, it really fits. Amazing. Now think about this. This puzzle was created after the fact. That was first the picture was made, and then they cut it up into little pieces. It didn't go the other way. So really, there's no question it's going to work. It's not a big discovery. But still, when it comes from your perspective, and it is a whole bunch of little pieces, and they all look almost alike. Usually it's, almost alike. And yet, none of them are interchangeable. And they all fit perfectly in their little spot. This gives you a feeling of how logic works. That if things are done right, they fit. So you have, so to speak, a hergish for the power of logic. This is not just logical, it's a hergish, it's an experience. I've seen people, adult people, not children, playing with puzzles for hours. I mean, I don't know if that totally makes sense. But there is an engaging aspect to it. Why? It is a challenge. But there is also a reward in the fact that you see the power of logic. If it has to fit, it'll fit. So this result is not just a logical proof, but there is a hergish involved. In every time when you have a complex mathematical problems and you solve it logically, even though it's all mathematical, it's simple step-by-step mathematics, but just the observation of a logic of how logic brings everything together is an experience.
Usually when you say you have a hergish in it,
Sorry?
When you say you have a hergish in it, is there some type of eining in it? What exactly does it mean you have a hergish in it?
There is some type of, right, there's an aspect of oinig in it. The main thing is, right, and is margish, the hergish is margish, so to speak, the beauty of it. There's a certain hergish coming along with it. So this is, again, on a very simple low level. But in every Indian sikhli, when you talk about a lakus particularly, when you misboinen in it, there comes to a point where you margish the Indian that you are misboinen in. And this hergish brings this Indian very close to your mind. It becomes part of your mind. Like in the case of this puzzle. Even though the puzzle is an external thing, you put pieces together on a piece of paper, you try this, but you get so involved and you have a personal feel for it to the point where it becomes part of you. To the point where you actually feel some kind of a satisfaction. Not in the achievement and accomplishment, that's in the fact that it fits together. It's almost that when the puzzle fits together, it justifies the power of your thinking. It becomes part of your own thinking. These hergish quality. So for a puzzle, it's not that important, but this is an important quality in a human being.
What is the hergishness of what, like as far as math and
No, I'll just give you an example of
no,
that.
what I'm just saying, in the example, the hergish stems from the idea that he knows, I mean, we're speaking, but there's an emes to it, that it has to come together. So therefore, he has to be involved in it because there's an emes to it. It has to work. There's no chance that it doesn't work.
And when it works, point is, he knows it's going to work. And yet, when it works, he gets a hergish for satisfaction.
The hergish is not just in putting it together, it's only when it's completed.
That's right. The very last piece.
That's the hergish.
That's a hergish.
And the entire time he's doing it, it's just...
He's laboring. Yeah, he's challenged. It will be a challenge. And every time he finds another piece, he feels a triumph. But that's a different thing. That's a personal triumph.
When it comes to his values,
But the hergish in the sikhli, in the fact that if something up is seichel, it will work. So that's a hergish sikhli. And the same thing, in a much finer, a higher level, he found that he is bonus in alakus. When he's mispoining and it puts everything together, and he can delve into it, and he actually recognizes how true it is. There's a hergish to the Indian itself.
not during his bonus, but when he kind of reconnects to that the davar chachma, that's when the hergish is.
That's right.
It's always because there's an emes to it.
That's right.
So it's the same thing as like solving mathematical equation. That chapping, that chap of that realization that of elikus is on the same level as this tainug of chapping a mathematical.
No, it's not at all. It's a completely different his bonus, completely different hamokas hadas. All I wanted to is to illustrate the concept of a hergish and seichel.
So they're totally different.
It's a completely different thing, but there is hergish and seichel. That's all I wanted to demonstrate. And that hergish has to be translated on this higher level when he's misboinen in Inyan Alaki. He's misboinen the Inyan from Yashmayayim, misboinen the Inyan from Afloah, and he gets a feel for it, like it becomes part of him, part of his own seichel. Ve'alodom neildu hamidus. Okay. So the Rebbe is going to explain this Inyan, how this Inyan of hergish is so significant. We see, so to speak, by practical observation. A human being here in the worldly context, because that he feels himself, He feels his chayus. He feels the fact that he's alive. Ma'oid, he feels his presence and his life and his experience of life very much. Azai, then, midoisov mispoilos betachlos hahispolus. If he feels his chayus very much, he's very much aware of his being alive, so then his midos also become aroused with great arousal. Lehoiv, to desire and to love, his poilus, with arousal, with great arousal, mashiyehav, that which is lovable to him. Velisnoy, and to hate, his poilus, also with great excitement, mashiyisno, that which he would not hate, which was hateful to him. Yoiser, by this person who feels very deeply and strongly his chayus, he will be mispoiled more than one who does not feel himself so much. He doesn't feel himself so much. Yeah. But what the Rebbe is referring to is not, there is two types of yeshus. The Rebbe is talking about a little bit richer than what we think. A dry stick. So it's hard. Dry. A piece of wood. Yeah, it's very dry. So it's hard. And you try to bend it, either you won't be able to bend it, but if you bend it, you won't crack it. You break it. So there is a person who is so to speak, concerned about his yeshus, that if you tamper, so to speak, with his yeshus, if you affect it, if you insult him, he can't tolerate it because he's ready to crack. He doesn't have any tolerance. Doesn't have the ability to take it and restore, so to speak, and rehabilitate. So when he's ready to crack, so he reacts very strongly. That's not what the Rebbe is talking about. He's talking about somebody who does have richness, like a living tree. You can bend it, it bends. When you let go, it comes right back. It doesn't crack. So, in a human being also, there is the richness and the, so to speak, the wealth of life that is within him, that he actually, he feels his life very much, and he doesn't get broken by offense, because he's got plenty of resource.
What is offense?
Offense, by being offended, by being insulted. He has plenty of tolerance. But even though he has plenty of tolerance, he doesn't get affected, doesn't get broken, but he reacts because he feels himself. There's a person who doesn't feel any offense. He doesn't feel his life. He doesn't experience life. We're talking about a person who absolutely does react to offense. He loves for strongly, he hates strongly. But not because it breaks him, but because it's a reaction from his inner feel of living. You follow what I'm saying? Take the analogy of this tree. Right? A living tree, you can bend down, it won't crack. But then you let it go. What happens? If it's a healthy tree, it will jump right back to where it was before. If it is not, it will remain lying on the ground. Put me down some there. It doesn't react. So this person says he reacts. He reacts with love and anger and with hate. Not because he cracks up, but because he reacts from an inner sense of living, from an inner feel.
It's life.
Right. He actually is sensitive. He feels what he feels this life. So this is what the Rebbe is bringing down, as we're going to see, the principle, the concept of hergish. This is a hagashmizik hergish. There is a ruchnizik hergish. When a person is margish life, it can also be margish on the cross. He's margish that there is a truth to life. Not just a presence of life, but a truth to life. He feels it. And this is why it affects him.
If like the life person miss Kriya Shema, so he's going in the morning and say, whatever way, I miss Kriya Shema, but the dead person, okay, so I miss Kriya Shema.
That's right.
He's not right.
You did it?
I want to see it. I want to see it. Baruch atah. Will come to life one of these days.
Working on pump that blood in.
Okay.
Adam eats the sun.
Adam eats the sun. Did you think about it?
I was going through trauma when you left. I thought a lot of. I'm getting. I can't say I'm there. I'm getting there.